Thank you, Superintendent, for being here with us today. So let's introduce ourselves first. I'm Lily.
I'm Linda.
I'm Rebecca.
I'm Anastasia.
I'm Simon.
I'm Lily.
I'm Albert.
I'm Alex.
I'm Annabeth.
It's very nice to be here with all of you.
Thank you, too. Okay, so we've heard that you're here first for the Jingshan School. It's your first time to be here with us. And can you tell us anything, so your first impression for Jingshan School?
Yes, it's my second day here, and it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to see you again, Lily, because we met in Newton where you gave such a wonderful speech to our mayor and many of our officials. And I've been so impressed. We have been so welcomed, so kindly and so warmly, and I had heard that before, but it's so wonderful to see it firsthand. And Principal Fong and all your teachers have been so welcoming, and we are so appreciative of that. And the other thing, today we got to visit classes, which was wonderful, because one thing I've been impressed at the school is that how you are both academically, there's wonderful preparation, and also socially and athletically, to see all of you outside playing. And I'm just really impressed with the school. And our American students are having such wonderful experience from Newton here. And I consider they're so fortunate to be here. And it's my second time in China, but my first time here. And I think I'm here with a large group of 17 people, and we're all having a wonderful experience. And so we thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so as we all know, there are tons of Chinese restaurants in America and also in other places in the world. So, and you must have had like American Chinese food in America before. So, and since you're already here, so can you tell us if you feel any different things about American Chinese food and actual Chinese food?
After eating the Chinese food that I ate the last 2 nights, I don't think I can go back and eat American Chinese food again. So that's what I said. When we have a delegation coming over, I told Principal Fan that we will not take you to Chinese restaurants. We'll have to go somewhere else because we can't compare. Did you eat the Chinese food in the United States, Lily?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Not that much.
See, that's what I mean. Yeah. So we'll have to. But the restaurants have been wonderful, and people are so kind and generous and welcoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are there any questions? Okay.
I want to ask a question. I like sports, so I want to ask a question about sports. Is there many sports activities in your school?
There are. We have a lot of sports, but I was just thinking, I was just outside at lunchtime, and our students, you remember this, Lily, only have 20 minutes for lunch. So you have an hour and a half to play basketball and get exercise. And so most of the sports that we do is after school. So our students play a lot of sports. Newton South won our state championship in volleyball, and our students play soccer, you call it football, and basketball. So they play a lot of sports, but not so much during the day. I've been impressed that you all get to exercise during the school day, in the middle of the day, and our lunch is only about 20 minutes, so students eat very quickly, which isn't so healthy.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I have a question on math. I attended their math class when I was in Newton, and in exams, the teacher would allow students to use calculators. And I want to ask you that, do you think the school should allow students to use calculators in math?
Yes. So it only happens usually in high school. So with younger students, they learn, their multiplication tables. But in high schools, it's used, and I'm not a math teacher, I'm a history teacher, so you should know that. History is my expertise. So, but the teachers believe that they want students solving the problems, the more complicated problems, and they're okay for the calculator because it's just kind of simple multiplication. But it's important when students are younger that they learn those math problems. So that's a good question. There's been lots of debate about that in the United States.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I heard that you're a history teacher. So I was the exchange student last year,
Yeah.
and then I've experienced the benefit of the program. But what wider effect do you think the program has on the relationship between China and the U.S.?
Yes, so I had a wonderful experience, Simon. A month ago, I heard Ben Liebman speak, and he was part of our first delegation that came over here in 1986. And he now is a leading professor that studies China at Columbia Law School, and he's made many contributions. He prepared Vice President Biden. When he visited China, Ben prepared him. And I think we're building students who understand both countries, and that is so valuable because, you know, the U.S. and China have not had relations for that long, and yet we're two major countries in the world. And what gives me hope when I see all of you and all of our students working together and learning together, I think we will have a wonderful relationship moving forward. So I think the exchange is really important that way. The other way I think it's important is the way our teachers learn from each other. I was just in the English office, and I saw our teachers from Newton working with your teachers, and I'm very excited to welcome your teachers next fall again. So I think there's a lot of learning both from all of you and students who visit, but also from teachers. And so it's been 36 years, and I hope there are many more wonderful years ahead.
Thank you.
And yeah, I want to consult you about something. Nowadays, it is believed that America and China all implement different policies and debate and just according to the nation conditions, different nation conditions. So the social needs of talents differ from each other correspondingly. And it is widely accepted that the schooling, the education decides the output of the talents to a great extent. So I guess there must be a divergency on the central idea or just the final aim of education just between America and China. So what exactly the difference is?
Yeah, well, I think that we have a lot of similar challenges.
Yeah.
I think our similar challenge is that having a good education for all students is a real challenge in our country.
Yeah.
Because you know, we have a lot of schools, like a lot of our schools in Newton, the students do very well. A lot of the families, you know, have some money, the students do.
Yeah.
And like Jingshan, which is an excellent school, and you have beautiful facilities. But we have a lot of students in the United States who go to schools that don't have all the resources, and you have a lot of schools in China that don't have all the resources. So I think our similar challenge is that how do we provide education to a lot of students?
Yeah.
And what I'm impressed by here at Jingshan is that you're doing a lot to work with other schools who don't have the resources that you do in terms of sharing curriculum materials and lots of other materials. I think, are you sharing? Yeah, and that's really important. And we need to do more of that in the United States as well. So in some ways, I think we face a similar challenge. The other challenge we face is that the world is so small, is that a lot of students in the United States are going to be working with all of you. And so we need to prepare all students, whether you're in Newton or Beijing, for the future, because the world is so much smaller.
Thank you, I get it.
All right. We know that there are actually two types of class system: the optional class system and general and administrative class system. So actually, I've been an exchange student in South for the first semester of 2003, and actually I really love the optional class system because it gives me freedom. So actually, I choose international cuisine and something else. So what's the advantages of the adoption of the optional class system, and what do you think of it?
Right. Well, I was actually just outside on your basketball court talking to one of your students who's in the economy class, and that's an elective class, right? So you do have some elective classes, and I think one strength of the American system is that we've always had a lot of electives, and that's a strength. But we also have a lot of classes that are required, as you know, when you were in Newton. So I think it's important probably to have both. I think that there are certain classes that all students need to have and should probably have, but I also think that students have different interests and different passions, And I think it's wonderful if schools can have both. My understanding is in China, you're starting to develop more elective classes as well, which is wonderful. I know you have wonderful arts classes here, as we do in Newton as well. So I think having both is very important, and that's what we strive to do, and I think you're trying to move in that direction as well.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, as you know, in China, students' abilities are usually tested by exams, which provides students with test papers. So in America, do educators use other more effective ways to measure students' overall skills, or are there any interesting ways for students to show what they have learned, or show their understanding about the subject?
Yes, and that's traditionally that's been a big difference between the U.S. and China, is that we don't have the testing in terms of, we have some testing, so some students in high school take the SATs to get into colleges, but some colleges don't require the SATs, but most students don't have to take tests to get into high school, because in the U.S. most students go to high school where they live, like in Newton. So that's a difference. However, we're starting to do some more testing now in the United States than we used to before within the last 10 years. And so we do have some testing, but there are some colleges that don't require any tests at all. So what they look at is your grades and what you've contributed to your community, and maybe your background in art or music. But there are some colleges that still require some testing. I think what's hard is that when you have very big universities or a very large country like China, it's very hard to read everybody's individual application. And so as a result, sometimes tests make a difference. What I worry about in the United States, as we have more testing, I worry about the pressure on students. That's something we've been talking about in Newton. As a matter of fact, at Newton South right now, where some of you were, they're talking about how much homework to give. And that, do we need all this homework? Some students have said there's too much homework. We don't get enough sleep. And I was just talking with somebody earlier that Jingshan doesn't give, there are schools that give more homework than, your high school. So I think it's about finding the right balance, where I think some homework can be good, but you also want students to be healthy. And I think your principal talks a lot about exercise and being healthy and taking care of the body. He talked a lot about that. And I think in the United States, we need to make sure we do that as well.
Well, it's quite different between Chinese and American educational system. Chinese educational system is strict, and we have pressure on academic. But American educational system pay attention to students' ability instead of result. So, which do you prefer?
Yeah, I think there's strengths to both systems. I think that something in America that we do well is we have a lot of problem solving and critical thinking and discussions. And I know in a high school class and an English class today, they were having a debate in the class, and I like to see that. I think it's good for students to speak a lot in class, and I think it's good for students to struggle with complicated questions that maybe you don't know the answer to. So I think that's something that we do well in the United States, and I know it's something you're talking about here as well. At the same time, it's important that students know history and know when things happened. So I think educational is a lot about balance. Like I said, it's good to have electives and some choices, but I think the world today is more than just memorizing knowledge, because it's about creativity. And I think the strength of the United States and what keeps our economy going, if you think about Bill Gates and Apple and all the technology that we've invented, is because people have been creative. And I think it's very important to be creative. That's why I love classes in art, where I see your wonderful art classes. You can be creative. And I think the world today is about being creative and problem solving and working with other people, both working with each other and then working with students from all over the world, which is why I think it's so wonderful you have all these exchanges, because the future of the world is going to be working with everybody.
Well,
It's my pleasure to be here to ask you a few questions. What's your first impression for the Chinese educational system? And what's the advantages and disadvantages of an American education? As you've talked a lot about the American school life and the classes, and did you find anything interesting or beneficial during your visit this time?
Oh yes, I mean I've learned a lot about your system, and the one thing I learned right away is that your country is so much older than our country. You know, we think in Boston, where we all live, that our country is old. Our country is so new. That you speak English, and the English teaching I saw today was so good, and I was so impressed by it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. You know, when I was in South High School, I chose global U.S. history and English. My teacher, Mr. Goldman, he made me to read Song of Solomon and Great Gatsby. And actually, it sounds very hard at the beginning because it took me a lot of time to write my essay and take notes. So, why do you choose these kind of books? Does they really benefit students in something else? Because it's very hard, because I can understand actually very well.
Yes, so those are hard. The Great Gatsby is a complicated book, but it has lots of life themes with it. You know, if you think about The Great Gatsby, there are a lot of themes. But it is a hard book, but you know, I think that what we try to do is have our students read different kinds of books so they think about life and their own life, and they learn about literature, and they have wonderful discussions. I hope, but it's important to have books that students understand. And then we were talking earlier, Lily, about the value of having very good discussions about life, about how people treat each other. I think we learn a lot from books. You know, I read some very good books about China before I came, and I think the value of reading books is you learn about different ideas, and it causes you to question. But you're right, those books are a challenge.
Thank you.
Okay, are there more questions? Anyone has any?
Yeah. And another question is, I've heard that the American educational system is more likely to emphasize the importance of innovation, creation, and the school is always aimed to provide students a larger stage for them to develop their overall abilities. So my question is, how can these profit students, when they step into the real society and start taking jobs, or?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of jobs today in 2015, a lot of jobs are about problem solving. So if you're going to be a successful engineer, it's not just about memorizing a formula, it's about taking the formula and applying it. So I think problem solving is really important. I think working in teams is really important. So when I visited your classes earlier, I did see some students working in teams and talking to each other, and I was very impressed by that. I visited your new physics lab. Have you seen the new physics lab? I mean, that was amazing. That's all about innovation. And I thought you're so fortunate to have an innovation lab. I would call it, we have an innovation lab. I would call your physics lab an innovation, because you'll be able to do experiments and solve problems. And that's the kind of education I think should be in the future. So I think you're all so fortunate to have that experience.
And well, I have another question. There's an interesting phenomenon in China now that more and more students prefer American education, especially the university, and are willing to study abroad. What do you think about this?
Yes, I'm
This
noticing
situation.
that. So in Boston, I live very close to Boston University, and there are many students from China at Boston University, and all over Boston because we have so many universities. And I think it's wonderful because we have great universities in China, in the United States, and it's wonderful to have students from China. I think, though, that I know that in China, you're starting to really expand and improve your universities here as well. But what I love about universities in America is that students come from all over the world to go to college in America, and that's wonderful for our students, because when our students in Newton go to college, they meet students from China and Europe and all over the world. So I think it's wonderful. And in the way all of you speak English so well, you'll have no problem going to the University of the United States.
Well, I'm really interested in which books do like students in America as my age, like in junior high school, read, and like which books are good for our mental health and can make us really think about something about life for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very good question. So there are a lot of books now that weren't around when I was your age, and we call them young adult literature, and there are wonderful books about students' lives. I just read a book recently that a lot of students read who are probably in 6th grade and 7th grade about a girl who develops cancer in her life and everything she's going through. And there are a lot of wonderful books now that are written for students your age. And that's what students in America are reading, books about the complexities of life and talks about struggles that students have. And there are wonderful books now, and that's really what our students are reading. Very different than like The Great Gatsby was written like 40 years ago and is a very complicated book that some students don't relate to. But some of the young adult literature students really relate to, and that's really what students are reading. It was written for them, and that's what a lot of adults are reading too. Some of the books that I'm talking about, there's a book called Wonder that adults are reading, even though they're written for teenagers because they're so meaningful.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So as we all know, that Jingshan is going to have its 55th anniversary. So do you have anything to say for our school?
Yes. So we're so pleased to be here at your 55th anniversary. Newton had a delegation come for your 50th anniversary. Both of our high school principals from Newton North and Newton South were here, and the superintendent before me was here for the 50th. And they talked about what a memorable experience it was. And so I just feel the 55 years and the graduates, I always think of a school, it's all about who they produce. And if this school is producing students like you, that explains why it's so successful. And clearly your principal and the teachers have worked very hard. I know how hard they work to create this school. And I hope you have many more years of success. And I know our students are participating in your anniversary celebration, and they were upstairs rehearsing for the celebration. So they're working very hard because I told them, do a good job because the 55th anniversary is very important. So it's wonderful to be here, and we want to have your principal come over to visit us as well to see some of our schools in Newton so that we can be as kind hosting as he has for us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all.
I think this is all the questions. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
For joining us today.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you all.